Mekhi Becton going and John Grenard getting drafted last night as well. So former Cardinal and a more recent former Cardinal there. So I'll turn it over to Paulie to kick things off now that we've gotten through this hiccup, thanks to Jeff, and see where
Yeah.
he takes us.
Jeff, have you got anything in store for me before we get started
I
here?
think
Let's
I've
just
got
see.
everything set correctly now. My apologies. I'm out of it. Long week.
Welcome yet to another social distancing edition of the Cardinal Couple Radio Hour podcast, where we discuss what could have been the joy and excitement of UofL women's sports right now. We have had some things go on, believe it or not, this week. Some exciting and not so exciting and some downright depressing stuff
Like
happened.
sirens in the background.
Yeah.
As the cops are closed in on me now, I'm doing this illegally. No, wait a second, it's the EMS units. Sony may be out in the yard sick yelling for help. I'm not sure. It's a busy road sometimes here. But anyway, as we traditionally and normally, except for last week, start the show, I'm going to throw it right back in Case's lap where he's going to do a little bit of scheduling and what have been scheduling, and also Twitter information. So, Case, fire away, Maestro.
Yeah. As always, start with Twitter here. I tweet as at best case scenario. Jared, that was our tweet sound. For the old school listeners will recognize that was a perfect rendition of the former chirping sound effect that we had. Paulie tweets is at Cardinal Couple. He does that sometimes. Not so much now. Like we've said throughout the last few weeks, not a lot to tweet about, but you follow along. You follow Jeff at Card Couple Radio, and you'll see interesting retweets of Coach Jenny Busman Kelly and see what kind of news she's trying to tease to everyone that we'll get into a little bit later. Jeff also tweets us at Jeff McAdams, where he'll talk about the fun and excitement, the joy and excitement of technical know-how, if you will.
Network engineering.
Yeah. And then Jared tweets us at Mr. Anderson Jared. He's been live tweeting the Colts draft recently. One of a few people. One of a few people that I know live tweeting the Colts draft. See, what you need to do is be a Seahawks fan, and then their draft will never make sense, so there's no point in even tweeting about it. They just make it up as they go along. But yeah, as Paulie mentioned, the schedule that would have been, he talked about it briefly before we were on the air, softball would have been wrapping up against NC State and then taking on Kentucky here this week. And then next week would have been, the following week, I suppose, would have been the softball championships, ACC championships. Lacrosse would have potentially been gearing up for a semifinal game, potentially unlikely, but possible. Semifinal game in the ACC championships, and women's golf ACC championship would have been this weekend as well. So it was set to be a busy week, and all that goes by the wayside, as we know. So that's where we are. That's what I got.
Yeah, and with the advent lately, guys, of virtual this and virtual that, I saw on the news this morning that they were going to have a virtual running of the Kentucky Derby. Okay. I wonder if there could have been a way to figure out how to play a virtual ACC softball tournament.
Well, they played virtual, NCAA basketball tournaments, so surely someone could have come up with something.
Yeah.
And that might have been interesting to see how softball would have done.
Yeah. With the spring sports, though, I'm not sure there was enough data material to kind of extrapolate what might have happened, unless it's just somewhat speculative, and then, who cares? Right? It's kind of my take on it anyway.
Yeah, at least the basketball simulations, you're like, this is based on numbers that we have from an entire season.
Right. Or effectively an entire season, minus a little bit of postseason stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, there wouldn't have been a lot to go on, but take a look at it, and then Jared was out there with me on it. Lacrosse was getting better. They were playing better. They had a winning record. Softball might have had a nice homestand, Jared. How heavily would you weigh something like that into the overall results that we saw so far?
Well, softball played a lot of ranked teams early on, so I wasn't too worried over that one just because of how difficult the schedule was, and then you saw as they started playing more opponents that were just a slightly less competitive range, and then those that are more of that equal level. That softball was actually handling all those pretty well, and as you mentioned, lacrosse. I thought lacrosse started the season well. I thought they continued to play well, and they were just getting better. Just the issue with lacrosse is when you get to the ACC, everybody is top 10 most of the time, it seems like. So it's just a difficult spot in that case. But, I mean, I think both of them would have had nice little runs in the postseason. They were both looking pretty good.
Yeah, and Jeff, one of the main things here that we had talked about a little bit before the show started is even if we had gone ahead and seen lacrosse go into ACC action under Scott Teeter, they haven't done so well on that in the last couple of years. Do you think it would have changed any this year? Just your thoughts on that.
Man, I don't know. That's hard to. It's hard to say this. Maybe they pick off a game, which would have been the first ever, right? Because I think it's still correct in saying that lacrosse has never won an ACC game. Is that correct?
Yeah, under Teeter, yeah, it's
yeah.
over conference.
Yeah. So so under Teeter, that's right. Would they have broken through that this year? I don't know. I think we would have seen closer games than what we saw last year, because I do think that the team is better. I mean, that was pretty much clear from watching them play and watching the development of the team. They were a better team. Could we have picked off a game in the ACC tournament? Maybe. Man, it would have been. It's tough. ACC, we talk about it all the time, is a brutal tournament in lacrosse, and man, that's a long, hard battle to win. So it would have been. I would not have been holding my breath for it. We'll put it that way. But hopeful as always and cheering. But
maybe we can best classify it case as a pleasant surprise if ACC lacrosse for Louisville resulted in a victory against the opponents. Because unlike many of the other sports in the ACC, let's consider not all of the ACC schools play lacrosse. I think with the roster, if I'm not mistaken, you guys can correct me on this or not, of teams that actually participate in lacrosse is 7 in the ACC?
Yes. Yep.
And so I think maybe at the lower echelon of that, if I remember correctly, us and Virginia Tech maybe were at the bottom of that echelon.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Louisville and Virginia were tied at 0-2 when the season was canned. Yep.
Maybe Virginia Tech doesn't play lacrosse then? Okay.
They beat us earlier in the season, so they were 1-1.
Okay.
That was the one. What was that? Like the 9-8 game came down to the wire.
It was.
Yeah, really close near the end there.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that gives me hope because particularly that game I saw and I went, wow, this was a really good game against another ACC lacrosse team, and okay, maybe not the top of the ACC standings, but like I said, so few results to really kind of figure that out for the year. But that was a really close game, and that's not something we've seen a lot of out of this lacrosse team in the past few years. So it was encouraging to see that, and I'm hopeful that next year will be even better.
Positives out of this, of course, are that Teeter had an expanded, larger roster this year. All, except for save a couple of seniors, will be back next year. Even the seniors have a chance to come back, I do believe in this. Mm-hmm. They have that belt of experience of a few games underneath them, so they can build on that as they go into next spring, or next, I guess you could call it next spring season, provided that they still play it in the spring. All that's in a flux right now. We don't even know what's going to happen coming up in the fall right now. But that experience, plus the new players that he'd gone out and recruited that will be coming in as freshmen, it's going to be a very full lacrosse roster with a lot of youth on it and a lot of potential and possibility for them to grow and expand. So I think that's a good positive, guys. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
So with the speculation of sports, I think we can kind of set that aside now and move on to the main event, which happened down on the UofL Belknap campus earlier this week, were the furloughs that Vince Tyra announced, although with not being specific, he did say that out of the 325 people that are officially listed as athletic employees, if you will, and I'm not sure how he got the number 325, guys, because when I did a count of the roster of the alphabetical directory, I came up with 375. So either my math was way off, or maybe some of those that are listed in alphabetical department order aren't exactly fully connected with athletics. I don't know. You tell me. But Jared, you did an article on these furloughs. Kind of tell us what you know, man.
Not everybody ended up with a furlough. Some positions were actually entirely eliminated. As expected, some of those were kind of in the marketing and ticket office departments where they were, well, one, they're not exactly in high demand right now, nothing going on. But then a lot of the way with things are becoming more digital, you don't need as many people employed with marketing and ticket office. We also saw a lot with some of the photographers, videographers, some of their digital editors. A lot of them did lose their positions as well. That one also, once again, did not surprise me. Just because athletics does have so many student interns, and these interns are unpaid. So you got to look at it that UofL is going to make a profit off of not having to pay somebody, but still getting solid work out of it. I mean, you go to a game and you're going to see 2 or 3 student interns that are taking pictures or video in the game, and then there's more that are kind of working back in the back, as Polly and I would see a lot of the time at basketball post game, all of the young men and women standing around holding the microphones and giving us the papers. At whatever point in the post game they finally got us our stat sheets. All of those students are unpaid, so they're working for free for athletics. They're making a heck of a deal right there.
And we knew that this was coming earlier this month. Tyra, of course, had outlined that there were going to be cost-cutting measures within the department, including coaches. They took a 10% pay cut, budget cuts to individual sports. And Tyra basically warned us that there were going to be some furloughs. Some of the names that have been speculated, and I hesitate really on mentioning some guys, and you can help me along with this, because why put any further embarrassment or despair on anybody who's worked there and is no longer a part of it now. But, there are some names out there. I know, Jared, you and I have been in contact with some people who unfortunately got the axe.
Yep.
Got the furlough.
I mean, nothing more than to feel bad for them and offer them kind of a best wishes right now.
And certainly hope that when things they can catch on in the field of their excellence with another organization or another type of business or something like that. Certainly, for example, with some of the photographers, videographers, some of the marketing people, some of the ticket office people, they have skills that are easily transferable, I think, guys, into a different realm of the business world.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of those are fairly transferable skills, or skills that are directly applicable elsewhere, potentially. I have kind of tangenting on that a little bit. I do have a little bit of maybe a little more interesting perspective on this compared to the rest of you, having been through being laid off in recent times within the past 3 months, right? I'm in a new job now. It's great. I'm going well with it. So everything worked out well for me. I got a raise out of it. So somehow, please don't worry about me. I'm in great shape, but obviously I feel for these people who are suddenly without jobs, and particularly are suddenly without jobs in the middle of a situation where, available jobs are really limited. Many companies have cut back on their hiring. They've cut back on their interviewing for people. So, I mean, the job market is really tough. It's huge. The unemployment rate's way up. So it's not a great situation that these people are finding themselves right now. and with our system in our country, for better or for worse, of having health insurance tied to your employment for the most part, that's an added challenge on top of this. Again, particularly in a situation where health insurance may be important, with a medical, pandemic going on. So, I really want to put my sympathies out there for these folks, and I'll say, if there is anything I can do to help them, point them, give them referrals or whatever, I'm here, I'm available. So I benefited from people reaching out to me after I got laid off, so I want to kind of pay that forward as much as I can.
Yeah. In case the furloughs, the job eliminations saved, according to some reports, U of L athletics around $5 million. Okay. Now, one question that I've seen come up is U of L done with this? Or are there going to be further furloughs and eliminations down the road? So, your thoughts?
I think what's concerning about this is that this may not be the end, obviously, and that this is more, if you extrapolate, this is about more than the cancellation of the NCAA tournament, right? The spring sports that were canceled are not revenue producing sports. Even Louisville's baseball team that charges for ticketing and can get some money by advancing to the College World Series is not bringing in the amount of cash that the NCAA tournament does. And for U of L, one of the most profitable athletic organizations in the country, to not have the nest egg to be able to carry through missing the NCAA tournament cash flow one season, it seems to me to be about more than that. So when you look at the next major item on the agenda, which would be college football, that would create a lot of money, I think you have to look at what this means, right? Louisville's saving $5 million by laying people off. I can't believe that the Louisville athletic department didn't have $5 million laying around to carry them through the summer, right? So that means that they're anticipating a loss of more cash offhand. So, if you draw some lines, and I don't think you have to reach too far outside the box to figure out what this might mean for the seasons upcoming.
One particular aspect of money that U of L has used, the athletic department has used in certain ways, that has drawn a lot of conversation, are the payouts for decisions made. The termination of Bobby Petrino,
Yeah.
Tom Jurich, of Rick Pitino, monies that were owed them. That's a lot of change right there, guys. That's a lot of money that could have gone maybe to help out with this issue. Uh, Jared, what do you think about that? They're paying Petrino a lot of money to do what?
I think it was a stupid deal that ended up backfiring on U of L pretty bad, especially a few years ago when we saw the exit of Patino and then Jurich and Petrino. So it was just a couple of misfortunate deals that have now kind of came back and they're haunting us at this point. So, I think that's a big part of where these budget cuts and furloughs and layoffs are coming from, is because they're having to dig pretty deep to still pay out some of these contracts. And these contracts are still millions of dollars. So saving $5 million is going to keep them from getting in the hole from still owing Bobby Petrino and Tom Jurich all this money from over these years.
And Jeff, I don't claim to be a legal mind or expert or anything like this at all, but was there a remote chance, a possibility of saying, hey, guess what? We got people that are currently working here. We want to keep them on board. Rick, Bobby, guess what? You and Mr. George aren't going to get everything you need right now because we got to keep those that are with us still employed. What's the thought on that scenario?
I don't think that's possible. Those payouts are contractually obligated as settlements of as a way to avoid potential court cases, and those court cases would have been super expensive to pursue. So I think I don't think it's realistic to try to renegotiate those at this point because, frankly, those three people that were mentioned, Petrino, Patino, and Jurich, why would they agree to any concessions on that? To be honest, right? They have no reason to. So I don't see this being something that they can renegotiate because those are legal terms of essentially a contract at this point. Whereas current employment, I mean, Kentucky, like so many states in the U.S., it's at-will employment. Your job can be terminated for any reason or no reason, right? And there may be some repercussions for that, but it's significantly less than, some sort of high-profile legal settlement like those are. So, can we say that a $14 million payout to Petrino was a bad idea? Yeah, probably, maybe. But those court cases would have cost an awful lot of money. And regardless, that's water under the bridge at this point. Those decisions were made. They're done. They can't really be visited. In accounting terms, that's a sunk cost. You can't rethink that at this point. You have to just make the decision on what can you do going forward. So I don't know that there's a whole lot of point in revisiting that.
Case, your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, I think the other thing to look at is that if you don't fire Bobby Petrino, you're still paying him that money, and then what, right? Louisville played in the Music City Bowl this season under Scott Satterfield. They won it. The total payout for the Music City Bowl was $5.7 million. You split that between two teams, and the winning team gets more money. You've pretty much paid for Scott Satterfield's annual salary by winning that game alone. And so it's net zero by having Bobby Petrino not on the staff because he wasn't making a bowl game this year. He wasn't bringing in money for the team. How much would they have lost in athletic ticketing revenue for football games if he was still the coach? Yeah. Coming off of a 2-10 season, people were not going to buy season tickets again. So, it's tough to look at. Obviously, the bitter pill of having to pay someone that was terrible for your program, and it seemed to be actively harming the football program, having to pay them a large sum of money is unfortunate, but there's a lot of hidden costs and hidden assets by firing that person that kind of don't go into it. And you look at it and you say, we had to fire some people. We have to pay those people some money that we fired, and that's just the way it is. That's the way it is in the sports world. That's the way it is in big business. People get paid severance packages to leave, especially when they negotiate out on shaky terms. It is what it is. It's unfortunate. It was really bad timing for UofL to have to make those big moves and have those big payouts at the same time as something like this happens, but it's no more than coincidence.
I've seen in some circles that people are trying to vilify Vince Tyree for all of this, and let's be very clear that this is a criminal with no face. It's a COVID-19 virus that is causing all these furloughs and these position elimination. It's not Vince Tyree sitting behind his desk and going, well, we don't need that, and how we get rid of that. Don't mistake that, people. This is a drastic virus situation response.
Yeah.
I can't see how anybody else could take it any differently, Jeff.
In fact, I think we're probably in a really good situation. Well, not really good situation. It's not a really good situation. We're in a less bad situation, thanks to the presence of Vince Tyree, right? Different people have different concepts of, social justice and whatever in around corporate behaviors and such. But Vince Tyree comes from that corporate background, that business background. One comment that I thought that he made that I think might have tonally been challenging was that he's had to do this many times, and I think he actually said many, which is tonally challenging to say. Yeah, I've laid off people many times. But what it says is that thanks to his background in business and in the corporate world, which he does have significant amounts of, he does have more experience to to recognize the situation and to think about the implications of it, much more so than most athletic directors, who, let's face it, many of them are former coaches that came up through playing sports, moved into sports administration, may not have that training in the more businessy sort of approach to it. So that has an implications. Honestly, you may look at what Tyree is doing and say, wow, it's really some kind of corporate-y sort of whatever. But, realistically, those are the things you have to do when you're leading an organization that has, books to balance. And it sucks. It really, really sucks. But it is also, if you want to pursue the ongoing health of the organization, that's kind of what has to be done. I'm not thrilled about it, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I have to agree. One of the things that I think tells you that you've got probably the right person in charge for a situation like this is when the reports come out that your athletic director has become a resource for other athletic directors that are now navigating this for the first time because of his experience. You don't want to have someone who's got experience doing this and who's going to handle it deftly because of that experience, but you'd rather have someone who knows what they're doing than someone who's stumbling around blind. And I think the other positive thing out of this is that it's really unfortunate for a lot of people to lose their jobs in this way and for UofL to have to make this decision. But Cincinnati didn't make that decision. They instead cut a program, and we haven't seen Louisville have to resort to something like that yet. So you take the good with the bad, I guess, is the best way to look at it.
And Jared, that Vince has come out and said on more than one occasion, we are not going to cut any programs. We are not going to fire any coaches or eliminate their positions. The Louisville sporting roster is going to remain the same. My question is, with the fall coming up, are we going to see fall sports, Jared?
I hope so, just because I'd like to get back out there, and I think sports could be just a nice distraction from everything. But it just kind of depends how the severity of the situation with COVID-19 is. You're seeing out there a lot back when in 1918, where there was a pretty bad pandemic, and places started to open up prematurely, and then it actually was worse in the second wave. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. A lot of businesses, the government are hesitant. They're like, do we want to go ahead and open up now that we've gotten past the initial peak? Or do we just want to go on and wait until it's pretty much gone altogether? You're seeing reports and rumors that certain places might not even open up until 2021, including Disney World, which is probably the biggest company in the world. So if they're still not sure that they're going to reopen, to me, that doesn't look too positive for sports right now.
Let's say, best case scenario here, sorry about the pun, UofL decides to go ahead and play North Carolina State over the Labor Day weekend in football. First of all, can you bring any fans into this, or is this going to be a TV event? And how do you keep the players safe?
I think what was concerning as far as fall sports go was news that came out yesterday that Louisville, Danny Wimmer Presents, had canceled the Trifesta, the 3 music festivals that take place in September. And one of the notes in that line was following along with the advice of health professionals, which means they're getting that information from somewhere. They didn't just decide to cancel, and someone has told them large gatherings, even in an outdoor setting in the fall, are probably not a good idea, right? So I think if we do see fall sports, I think people need to be very prepared for the idea that those are played without fans, right? And I don't know how flexible or negotiable TV contracts are, because I don't think schools can afford that. You can't afford the travel and all the costs that go along with fall sports without having additional money if you're not having ticketing revenue. And I don't know that you can negotiate more out of television contracts for that. So I think if you're looking at the possibility of not having fans, which I think is the most likely chance that we have any fall sports, then you have to be prepared for the fact that not having fans may mean that more seasons are canceled, especially for non-revenue sports. But football, it might happen. It might in some capacity.
I'm going to take you all in a different direction on this. So we've talked about revenues and attendance and television. What about the student athletes? They're the ones that are going to actually have to be out there. Let's take a look at the conjecture of fall sports. Football players gather in huddles. They sack in mass tackling. They guard each other very, very closely on the line of scrimmage. Soccer, boy, talk about close contact in soccer. The whole game of soccer is about being up in somebody's face, trying to deny them moving the ball or stopping shots. Going to field hockey, the same idea. I think rule number one before any of this, guys, is protecting the student athlete.
Yeah, that has to be a factor in the discussion. And in many sports, like you said, particularly where there's, you're in field sports, you got two teams on the field at the same time. It's just not realistically going to be able to do that and keep the student athletes safe, I don't think. And that's part of why I'm, at this point, pretty pessimistic about us having any sort of fall sports. Depressingly, everybody knows how much I want to see my volleyball play, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I think there are maybe a handful of sports that could go ahead. Golf, for example, probably could probably do that in a safe way. Maybe tennis, in some of those. You could probably find a few sports that can go ahead. For the most part, though, I don't think it's realistic to have fall sports. Not just the revenue situation with the big sports like football. Like Kay said, I don't think you can. I don't think you can do it and make the budget work with that. But yeah, the safety of the student athletes, any field sport where you have interactions between players like that, I just think is not going to happen.
I think probably the situation to look at is watching Major League Baseball, one of the an organization with the resources like Major League Baseball that plays a sport outdoors where players are pretty much as far away from each other as possible for almost the entire time, and they can't get it sorted out. They can't figure out any way to try and move forward. They've thrown ideas around and nothing has stuck so far. And if they can't figure it out for their sport and with their resources, I don't know that there's hope for other people to figure it out for the different sports and the safety of the student athletes.
Yeah, and Jared, let's just take a look at the sport of baseball. Obviously, you can't social distance a catcher from a batter. You can't be 6 feet away and then trying to catch pitches from a pitcher, okay? On a close play down the first base line, that first baseman's going to have to be standing on that bag, and that runner's going to run right by him, and let's say he gets there safely. He's going to stand there. Does the first baseman now have to stay 6 feet away from him?
Well, it goes beyond the players in this case. You're looking at the umpires don't really have a way that they can stand far back either, especially your home plate umpire needs to be right on top of the plate by the catcher and batter to accurately make that call. You're looking at the coaching staff. You're looking at your trainers who have to deal with these players very closely, stretching them out, massaging them, working with them on injuries, your team doctors. So it goes way beyond the players. You're looking at it feeds into hundreds of people would start getting involved eventually, just due to all the different positions and jobs that are required with the sport. But looking at just your 9 players on a field at a time too, I mean they're still coming pretty close contact. You're still sharing the baseball. I mean, somebody's got to field the ball, throw it around. So if one person, for some reason, they spread the virus onto the baseball, you throw it down to first baseman's now got it. Your pitcher and catcher throwing the ball back and forth are going to have it. So it's a pretty tough situation right there too, because even small things like that, it can spread.
Yeah, and I hadn't even taken it that further in my thought process about all the people behind the scenes, the players that do the work, like the trainers, like the equipment managers, like everybody you mentioned there. So, I hate to blow a negative song here, okay, but I just don't see how it's going to happen until we get a virus a vaccine working and working effectively. And of course, in light of all this, there's been a lot of consternation about a couple of our states deciding we're going to open up certain businesses that people can now go to more than there were. Guys, I'm not going to call out any names or any particular individuals or anything, but is this really the time to be opening a bowling alley?
Nope.
Come on.
Nope.
Come on.
I'm going to bite my tongue as well, not name names because I really, really want to, but I won't. But yeah, this is, I mean, bowling alley may be less bad than some others, but there certainly are businesses that are being thought about being reopened that it would just be irresponsible to do it. I am appreciative of how here in Kentucky that is being handled. Again, I'm probably not going to I'm not going to name any names here, but there's we see our 5 o'clock news briefings and the news that's coming out on that, and we see the consideration and thoughtfulness that's going into that process from this administration, even working across the political aisle to bring about rational, reasonable results. That we've got to be proud of that, and I don't see that happening in some other states, and it's scary. I love traveling. I love getting out and going on road trips and some of the vacations I do. There are some states that I'm going to be avoiding for a while. Certainly, if I do any traveling, there are some states that I'm going to avoid for a while because of that.
Yeah, and the joke goes around is that those 90% of the people who own gym or health club memberships had no idea they were closed or open anyway because they never attend. So, one thing I think that we kind of need to look at as we talk about all this as well is revenue being what it is, student athlete health and safety being what it is, fan experience being safe and healthy needs to be there. One of the things that I think people don't take into consideration here is sponsorships of our athletic events. You go to a football game. How many commercials do you see? How many signs do you see? Advertisements you see for this business, that business, that business, that business, and in just about all the sports out there that UofL participates in, there are corporate sponsors. There are businesses that put money out there, and a lot of businesses aren't open or going to be able to do that. Guys, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting situation because it's just going to exacerbate the problem. You got to think that Vince Tyra and some others in the athletics are hoping that some of their sponsors can continue their support, but it's hitting everybody, and it's hitting the sponsors as well, and they're going to probably, in a lot of cases, have to pull back on their sponsorships. Now, there is some other possibilities. You do have organizations, and I am certainly super counting my lucky stars that I'm in one of them right now with my new position that I have, right? That are seeing an increase in their services and seeing an increase of their customer base as a result of this. I wish the reason for our customer base increase was different, but it's certainly, I look at the situation and I'm very, very happy and count myself privileged and to be in a situation where my job is very safe right now. In fact, we're trying to figure out how to work around some of our organization's larger pullback on hiring because we may need to be hiring people to fuel some of the growth of the organization, the part of the organization I'm in. So, maybe there's a chance to shift some of those sponsorships around to some of those other organizations. I don't know. I'm sure that folks in the development departments and stuff in these organizations, in athletic departments, will be looking at that as a possibility. It's going to be tough, though. I mean, also, what are you sponsoring? If there's no events, what are you sponsoring at that point, other than just to be able to put commercials on the air?
Yeah. As we continue to stare into the abyss that is the fall season and can't see the bottom yet. And time's going to tell, guys. time's going to tell. So I think that's really all we can say in a closing statement toward this particular aspect of the show today. Is we'll see what the future brings and hope for the best, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to see volleyball. So, I don't
want,
think it's going to happen, but I want to.
I want to go down and interview Coach Sauer after a win.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know if I'll be able to do that this fall. Probably not, but yeah, and not because of her own personal preference, because of the social. Since Jared wants to take pictures of me interviewing Coach Sauer, record it, and then take pictures of goal playing. So yeah, guys, come on. Case wants to go bother Karen Ferguson days with soccer comments. But there it is.
Yeah.
So we'll move on in a little bit. We had some kind of cryptic and interesting volleyball tweets come out this week from a certain coach, Danny Busboom Kelly.
Yeah, we did.
What's going on?
Yeah, we just had one. It sounds like it's probably a verbal commit. It was a bit of an interesting comment because there was comment about it. Let me pull it up real quick. It said we added another card that fans will be able to enjoy year round. When that comment kind of says, wait a minute, are we doing multiple sports here? We get somebody come in and doing multiple sports? It's not completely out of the ordinary for volleyball players to also play basketball. Is a pretty common dual sport situation. But potentially there could be others that could be there. But it's interesting. If it's just a verbal commitment, obviously we're not going to hear anything until they're signed, anything official. So, it's a tease. It's interesting. Let's hope. There's a lot of we've got some really great players already kind of verbally committed to the team. So if we're adding another one, that's going to be really interesting.
Case in his article today mentioned this a little bit at length. He talks about Gwen Rucker, of course, who we all remember played basketball and volleyball at Louisville. He's also mentioned Peyton Verhulst, who was a very, very good volleyball player in high school before she gave that up to concentrate on basketball. What other names are we kind of thinking of, looking at possibilities of people that, if it's not somebody that, who is this? Come on. Give me some ideas, guys.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not Case. I'm sorry. I'm jumping on him. But I tried to think about who it might be, and I don't have any idea. I wasn't able to find anything.
I don't know. It could just be an incoming freshman or a future commit that may just be finishing up junior year in high school, too, that we're not quite aware of yet.
Right.
Case? You got any other words?
I'm going very deep into the rabbit hole right now. I was actually looking at the likes on Danny Busboom Kelly's tweets to see who has liked it, to see if I could find any clues. There's a high school in Nebraska, Clarkson Lee, that liked it, so I don't know if that's got anything to do with it, but
of course she's from Nebraska, so who knows?
Yeah, so it could just be something related there.
Yeah.
No real way to know off the top of our heads who could do it. That the Peyton Verhulst thing was mainly a joke. I can't imagine she would give up any amount of basketball season to play volleyball, especially having given up volleyball after middle school to focus on basketball for high school.
And I think she would pull an Andy Bashir here and tell you can't do that. So.
Yeah.
But I also posited the consideration that it could be a player that is going to be a great personality, that is just at every UofL sporting event, like Celine Funky or Jazz Jones. You would say that you enjoy them year round, right? Regardless of whether or not they're playing. Would Danny Busboom Kelly see it that way? Probably not, but maybe.
Yeah. There is one response on the tweet that I'll bring up, and I do this very hesitantly. Somebody,
this goofy person.
Yeah.
What a dumb question.
It may not be. It may not be. I don't know. I don't want to cause rumors here, but somebody did ask if Danny was pregnant, which could be, that sort of possibility. I don't know. I don't think it's likely. I don't think the tweet would be done in that form if that was the case, but in theory it could be.
That's that's a little bit out of the box thinking, but
Yeah.
it's certainly possible. It's certainly possible. Certainly, a baby in the family would be something that Cardinal fans could enjoy all year round,
Mm.
like they've done with Jeff Wallace's children, Sam Purcell's children, the other coaches that have children that we've gotten to know over the years. A
Yeah.
very good point, and one I
Yeah.
hadn't really considered all that closely
Yeah.
there.
I will say I don't think that's the case based on the way the tweet was worded, but somebody did respond to it, and yeah, it's a possibility, but I don't think so. So let's not get any sort of rumors started on that.
And if we do, we can trace them directly back to Case for writing the article. So there you go.
Way to go, Case.
Jeffrey tweeted the tweet.
Yeah, I don't know if we can put a face on this crimer either or not, guys. So I think we're okay there. There's also some very interesting news that you kind of wrote about today in regards to taking a look at Louisville City FC announcing a women's academy to their fine soccer organization. Give us the scoop on that.
Yeah, so this came out yesterday. Louisville City announced their NWSL team last year. They announced their men's youth academy shortly thereafter, really rounding out the Louisville City organization beyond just the one team. And then yesterday it came out that they were adding a women's academy via the Elite Club National League Girls Division. So that will be under or U18 players, probably numerous different teams. A lot of the time, academy teams are labeled as such, but they're really multiple U division teams. The ECNL, in their press release, said that 90% of their alumni move on to play college soccer, and that 1,100 were in college teams last year. So that's exciting, right? I think the great news for this is that it provides a closer club option. There's a lot of those in Louisville, but this will be an even bigger one. And having the association with Louisville City is potentially going to provide additional revenue to get some more players the opportunity to get noticed. And maybe you find more Amina Ekiches that don't have the means to attend all the ID camps or get picked up or play on one of the Javanon or Mockingbirds year round. So this could be really exciting for not just UofL, but a lot of the universities in the area to get a better look at area talent.
And Jared, there's another factor here that we need to look at. This could be really good as far as recruiting for Karen Ferguson Days in the women's soccer program in Louisville as well.
That's exactly what I was thinking. There is a lot of local talent here in terms of both men and women's soccer. We've seen quite a few fantastic players come from both Manual High School and Sacred Heart. I'm sure there's a few other high schools in town that also offer some incredible talent. By having that, being able to add that on is hopefully maybe even in the long run, it may attract more families to move here, especially if they're more of a soccer related family, have them in town, but also hopefully a lot of the high schoolers around here or just in the regional area might look into going to some camps there. It gives Karen Ferguson Days and her staff a good chance to go meet them. UofL is less than 10 minutes down the road from the Louisville City Soccer Stadium. So it's easy to say, hey, come over to campus real quick, but we'd be happy to show you our facilities, talk to you, and just show you around the city. So it's an excellent recruiting opportunity, and I think we'll start seeing some of the effects and results of that probably in about 4 years or so.
Yeah, and I'll chime in here and say that there has been a lot of coordination and support between the organizations, between UofL Soccer, both men's and women's, and the Louisville City FC program and the overall organization. And we saw I think Case, you mentioned last week maybe that there's another connection now with Hilton Days, who's Karen Ferguson Days' husband, is now part of the Louisville City FC organization, I believe. So
Yeah, that was Jared. So I will.
Oh, it was Jared? Okay. Yeah.
Great credit to him.
Yeah. So I mean, strengthening the ties between those organizations as a whole. It's a positive situation, I think.
I like it. I like
Yeah.
it a lot. On Friday, it was my day to do the Cardinal Couple article, and Thursday, for those of you not from this area, was a very rainy day here in the Louisville area. I could not do any outside work, any gardening at all, so I packed up my dear wife. We jumped in the car. We took masks and sanitizer and drove down to the Belknap campus. This time of year, in normal times, the campus would be a very still busy and viable spot. Things going on down there. What I drove around and looked at in about an hour or so's time, guys, was a ghost town. We started over at the Cuber Center, Planet Fitness organization, where we've been in. I've been in so many times over the last couple of years, I couldn't really start to count how many times I've been there for press conferences, to talk to coaches, to talk to players. There's a sign on the door now when you go in the main entrance, and that sign tells you in no uncertain terms, the center is closed. It tells you where to take deliveries. That parking lot that surrounds the facility adjacent to the lacrosse center, guys, normally you can't park in there because it's full of cars. There were 2 cars in that entire parking lot. People, I'm assuming they were either part of maintenance, building the grounds, or maybe just 2 stalled vehicles that couldn't leave. I don't know. But those are the only 2 cars in a lot that holds well over 300 cars. It was depressing. It certainly was. But as I left there and looked at a lacrosse field, that's when it really hit home to me. Because I can remember, Jared, you and I, Jeff, Cates, all of us going through that gate, being greeted by the yellow shirts, seeing the teams warming up on the sidelines, hearing the pep band, listening to the public address announcements. It was a vacant field. There was nothing going on there at all, and you couldn't even get in. The gate was locked, and there was a sign on that too. It's a different world down there, fellas. It's a different world right now because of this. And I thought the pictures that I put out were pictures that I hoped that people could look at, maybe bring back some memories, but further emphasize the fact that right now we are in social distancing and things are closed, guys. And there are no players running in tandem around campus practicing. There's nobody down there except for the essential employees on campus. Jared, my pictures aren't nearly as good as the kind that you put out there, and I made mention of that. But let's just talk about the aspect of a photographer, a videographer with nothing to do now.
It's moved away from sports and photo shoots for the most part to going out, walking around. One of the places I do like to take pictures at a lot is the zoo, because it's right around the corner from me. Membership, I can go just whenever I want to, find a nice quiet day, walk around, spend some time, focus on the animals. Usually if you go during quiet periods, animals might interact with you more, so that's helped me with the pictures. Unfortunately, the zoo is one of the places that is closed as well, so I don't have that opportunity. I can kind of drive around town right now, take some pictures. I could go hiking through the woods, take some pictures. Lately, it's kind of been the let's go explore some abandoned buildings, just see what's going on, get some cool pictures there. But I've kind of just taken a little bit of time off from photography altogether right now, just trying to avoid going out and about, partly because I don't want to take the risk of running into somebody who may have it, or also the risk of, with my position and what I do, there is always the chance that I may have already contracted it and am not aware. So I don't want to take the chance of passing it on to somebody else as well. So here, probably as things start to get back to normal, maybe next week start picking up some photography again. I've had a couple people reach out about graduation pictures, so what I'm thinking is I might just grab my big lens that I use for sporting events, and I'll say, you're going to stand here, and I'm going to stand way back here. Keep some nice distance between us, take some pictures, and just the unfortunate, sorry, we can't go through and look at pictures along the process. Usually I'll show the models, be like, here's what I'm looking at, here's what I see. I'll just be like, sorry, I'll send you the pictures on Dropbox when everything's done at the end.
Okay, so one of the big things on Saturdays in the fall down on the UofL campus is Card March. And I showed a picture of that card walk, that red outlined walk leading from the parking lot down to the start of the stadium, completely bare and completely empty. No people, no tents, no nothing, no, not even any portalets. They just talk about how big an aspect football on Saturdays is for UofL.
Yeah, and it's big enough that there have been changes that are going to be made to that Card March area, fan zone being created, a complete redesign of that space, and that parking lot to really get fans down there, get them tailgating, get them to be a part of the whole experience, and bring the experience outside of small tailgate parties where people show up to the games late and get them to the stadium to be a part of the team coming in, increasing the status of Card March and really getting this to be the football environment that a lot of people would like to think that it is already. Um, people here love football, and that's the reason that Papa John's Cardinal Stadium was able to be built, is because people wanted more, and then that's the reason it was able to be expanded. Um, and it doesn't have the same name anymore, but Cardinal Stadium is one of the biggest, or not one of the biggest, but it's certainly the biggest arena in Louisville, which is not competing for much, but it has seating capacity on par with Kroger Field, Commonwealth Stadium in Lexington, and this is getting to be with the move to the ACC a major part outside of just basketball to really bring this to be a two primary sport school, and if you count baseball, all three, with Louisville leading the way with those three major sports. And so, yeah, no football on Saturdays is going to be something if that turns out to be the case.
Jeff, the SAC Center was locked. The adjoining Cardinal Arena was not accessible. That was particularly hard too. The times that you and I have been in that building to do different things, you to get in there for volleyball and such.
Yeah, it's interesting because the SAC is usually a generally open building anyway, right? Even if it's if there's not any events going on, it's still kind of the student center. There's still, even if nothing within it is open, the main building itself you can usually still walk through because it's part of the path to get from one side of the railroad tracks to the other on campus. They usually keep that open. So it's interesting that it was completely locked. They do lock it after hours, obviously, but for it to be locked up during the day is an unusual thing to see.
So that is, as I ended with how it is, we all hope it changes soon. We all hope that things can get to a condition where people can once venture out once more, that a virus antidote is found. But time will tell. Let's go ahead and get it all into the final thoughts now. We'll go ahead and start with you, Jared.
I'm just really ready for everything to get back to normal. Sadly, it doesn't look like it's going to be anytime soon, but all we can do is just and hope, and everybody can be strong together.
Case, what final thoughts have you got for us?
I'm doing my best to stay positive about athletics news that we do get, like the addition of the NWSL Academy team yesterday, and news that we see about players maintaining their workouts and being excited for upcoming seasons whenever they do happen. The addition of new players to rosters, it's exciting, and it's the best that we can look for in certain times. So that's what I'm encouraging other people to do. You're looking for a sports fix. You're probably not going to get it in late or in live games unless you're watching Asian baseball is pretty much the only way. But Louisville, despite the negative news that they're having to go through, they're also being able to put out some positive news. So look for the good where you can.
Jeff, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would just encourage people to think about what the new normal might be, right? We all want to get back to normal. That's probably going to be a long way away, realistically. Um, so there's going to be an interim new normal that we're going to have to adapt to. That is probably not going to involve a lot of large crowds for a while. And that's kind of what we've talked about with the idea of fall sports. But think about that beyond the sporting world and also in your personal life. Start preparing yourself mentally, figuring out how you go about things in a way that doesn't involve being maybe close contact with other people. That's a little bit of a depressing thing to think, but I think the sooner we can start to think through that and start to kind of normalize it in our mental approach to life, we'll all be better off for it. So, this will eventually pass. I do believe that our society will get back to what we saw as normal, but it may be quite some time. So just be prepared for that, and look for the best in life. Look for the helpers. Look for the positive moments.
Very good words, sir. My final thoughts were it maybe hit me as hard as it has hit me since our stay-at-home orders and social distancing has come down when I went to the gate for football that I would enter in fall afternoons. I don't cover football. I go purely as a fan. It's not a part of the Cardinal couple routine. I go for the social element. I go for the high-fiving the guy sitting next to me when the Cards would make a first down to throw a touchdown pass. I would go for the trip up the steps to make a beer run, okay? I would go for the tailgating aspect. I would go to watch the marching band, the cheerleaders, especially the Ladybirds. And it came to me that I don't know when any of this is going to happen again, if anytime soon. So the resolve came to accept the new world order as it is and hope for better days. And I think we can all join in that unified thought. Let's hope for better days, guys.
Absolutely.
For sure.
All right. Play me a little Hazel, Jeff. We'll get on out of
All
here,
right.
buddy.
All right. Thanks, folks.